The question of the pupil. You seem to be saying that Gurdjieff was not teaching about consciousness, but was in fact teaching about perception. This is very difficult for us to take seriously. The teacher replies, it is only possible to take what Gurdjieff said seriously if we know what he said. That is to say, what did he actually write down in his own book, The Tales of Beelzebub, to his grandson. Now Gurdjieff claims there is a break in the chain of energetic production in man, and this is caused or comes from perception, the fact that we perceive only automatically and therefore do not receive as we should the food of impressions, the higher energies we should have. We don't have these energies, and so we've fallen to a very low level, a level in fact we can't get out of. We can't do anything about this. We're at so low a level. So this is about perception. This is what Gurdjieff writes. Now Gurdjieff did speak to Ouspensky about consciousness, and of course he did. Because if we look at Gurdjieff's writing, The Tales of Beelzebub, to his grandson, one of the first things Gurdjieff writes is that man has two consciousnesses having nothing in common. That is, two conscious minds. This is what Gurdjieff was trying to explain to Ouspensky. We have two conscious minds, and effectively this is a structural situation, it's an energetic situation. We are living in the wrong one. So we're living in a conscious mind at too low a level energetically, and as a result of our energetic level we're in the wrong conscious mind at too low a level, and our state of consciousness is not a true state of consciousness. It is a state of consciousness that we can refer to, as Gurdjieff apparently did to Ouspensky, as waking sleep. Waking sleep. So we are living in a conscious mind with a state of consciousness known as waking sleep, and we're at too low a level. And this is a consequence of the low level of our overall energetic state being at too low a level, and so we fall into this structure of having two consciousnesses, two conscious minds, and the fact that we are living in the wrong one, a situation that we can't get out of, as we are. Now we have our true consciousness, a true conscious mind, Gurdjieff writes, remaining in us, which has a true state of consciousness, consciousness of self. But it doesn't operate in us, it doesn't manifest in us. We don't have this state of consciousness because we don't have the energies as fuel, effectively, for this true conscious mind to manifest. So what Gurdjieff was explaining in terms of consciousness to Ouspensky makes sense if we look at what Gurdjieff wrote. We have two conscious minds, we're living in the wrong one, we're not conscious because we're in a state of consciousness appropriate to that false conscious mind, a state of consciousness known as waking sleep. But our true consciousness remaining in us does have a state of consciousness, consciousness of self, true consciousness, but doesn't manifest because it doesn't have the energies to do so. This is Gurdjieff's teaching. This is completely different from Ouspensky's understanding of what Gurdjieff told him. And hence this is completely different. That is to say, what Gurdjieff writes is completely different to the Gurdjieff tradition, which is suggesting that we can develop consciousness in us in some way, some magical way, and that consciousness will develop and even change from our state of waking sleep that we are in now, true. But that the Gurdjieff tradition is suggesting we can change this state of consciousness, waking sleep, into consciousness of self by some sort of efforts on our part. As if we can change states of consciousness. Well, this to me sounds unlikely, and the evidence points to this not being possible. It is completely different. The Gurdjieff tradition is a completely different teaching to Gurdjieff's own writings. So I'm not saying that Gurdjieff was not teaching about consciousness. Gurdjieff taught about consciousness. What he taught is completely different from what is understood in the Gurdjieff tradition, and has, I suggest, become set in stone in that Gurdjieff tradition. Something very difficult to change. But Gurdjieff's teaching overall is that there is this break in the chain of energetic production in us. And this break in the chain of energetic production in us is, or comes from, perception. The fact that we have an excellently working automatism for perceiving all kinds of new impressions. Perceiving new impressions. So we receive our new impressions, the food of impressions, only automatically. It does not, this food does not sound in us, it does not develop in us, it is not digested by us as it should be. So, to go back to your question, firstly, I'm not saying that Gurdjieff was not teaching about consciousness. Does that make sense? Gurdjieff was teaching about consciousness, but in a completely different, it's a completely different teaching to the teaching of the Gurdjieff tradition, because Gurdjieff was teaching that we have two conscious minds, a structural situation, an energetic situation, and a structural situation, nothing to do with psychology. We have two conscious minds. It's a structure. That's how we're structured. We are living in the wrong one, so we don't have a true state of consciousness. But of course we can't change states of consciousness. We can change over the two conscious minds. We are at the moment living in the wrong one, but we can change this over. And it depends upon energies. We are only in this structural situation, in this false conscious mind, because we lack the energies required for the manifestation of our true conscious mind. If we can provide these energies as fuel for our true conscious mind, then our true conscious mind can come to predominate in us. This is the transformation that Gurdjieff is writing about. This is the stairway that he expressed to Ouspensky. But this teaching has nothing to do with the Gurdjieff tradition, the teaching of the Gurdjieff tradition, that we can change states of consciousness by means of efforts on our part. This is nonsense. So Gurdjieff was teaching about consciousness, but the central core of Gurdjieff's teaching is actually about perception, and the fact that we perceive only automatically, and therefore we don't receive the food of impressions, the higher energies we should have, these higher hydrogens, this higher food we should have. We don't have this, and so we've fallen to our very low state. So I think that answers your question.